And we are off and running and ready to have a little fun this afternoon. Welcoming everyone to our latest edition of the Lennox on Baseball live stream podcast. Yesterday, talked with Scott Lauber, who covers the Philadelphia Phillies for the Philly Inquirer, and a lot of great stuff from Scott yesterday. So you can take a look at that interview and watch it and listen to it. And all of our interviews on our Lennox on Baseball Facebook page. Today's guest is someone I have known since 2002. He was a member of the Lynchburg Hellcats when I was a broadcaster in the Carolina League in Wilmington, Delaware. And from year to year, it's hard to say in minor league baseball that there are rivals, but the Wilmington Blue Rocks and the Lynchburg Hellcats had a tremendous rival. Going to get into some great stories with Ray Navarrete, who was on that 2002 Carolina League team. Ray, 14 years of pro ball, including 8 years on Long Island with the Long Island Ducks. Ray, thanks so much for taking a couple of minutes with us. I'm glad we were able to connect here. We got a lot of stories for you to share. First off, kind of give us an idea of what present day is for you with everything that's going on here in 2020.
Well, first of all, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time. I know we've been going back and forth for quite some time to get together. So happy to be on the show. Really pumped that you're doing this. So this is amazing. And I'm sure it's going to bring back a ton of memories. So yeah, present day Ray. I am now a proud father of a beautiful 8-month old daughter, Stella Rose. And I am working hard to build a life after baseball. This will be I believe my sixth year of non-playing. I retired after the 2013 season, after 14 years of professional baseball, which was just a blessing, and 14 more years than I ever thought I'd ever get. So it was awesome. I guess my life now is a combination of entrepreneur, baseball coach, still the same kid, chasing a dream of building a brand, and doing the best I can to balance being a good husband, a good father, having a career while at the same time holding on to my dream and building a brand that I really, really still believe in with all my heart. So that's kind of where I am. I'm very much still the same guy, except for the fact I'm not lacing up the cleats for a game at 7:00 at night.
There you go. Let's start there a little bit in the sense of, even years later, just as a broadcaster, we're creatures of habit as human beings, but we're creatures of habit when you're involved in the game of baseball. And, you get to the ballpark every day at 2:00, 3:00, report time, the bus from the hotel on the road to the ballpark, batting practice at a specific time. How do you still sort of go through that of like, it's 5:15, we should be hitting right now, all these years later?
That's a great question. I don't necessarily know, like I said, I'm 5 or 6 years out from my playing days. So I don't think I've got caught up in the time of 3:45 might be stretch and BP's at 4:15 and things like that. But there are many times still around 6:30, 7:00, I'll look at, if I'm working at the baseball facility that night, if I'm with a young player, or even if I'm home with my wife, there are times that I'll look up at somebody and say, wow, there was once a time I was getting ready to play a game right now, or that, first pitch is just literally in 10 minutes. So yeah, I catch myself looking back at that time period of my life, especially when baseball season rolls around, like Major League Baseball, and the games are back on TV. So yeah, of course, 7:00, 7:05, will always hit me in some capacity, because, for 14 years of my life, 7:00, 7:05 for the majority of your schedule was game time. So absolutely, I do catch myself a lot of times looking back at my playing days and saying, during this part of the day I was doing this, or during this part of the day I was doing that. And I think it's something I'll always do. I think any baseball player is going to do that, for the remainder of their time here.
2002, you're in the Carolina League in Lynchburg, Virginia, with the Hellcats and the Pirate system, and you have a phenomenal year. You guys in Lynchburg, you had a phenomenal team, and there's some moments, like I said earlier, as we were introducing you, there was a rivalry that year. I mean, it wasn't just go to the ballpark every day. Wilmington, Lynchburg, it got heated on occasions. But what I always think about, and I'd like to get your side of it in a sense of, the rest of the story on the other side. You and Josh Bonifay, I would come into the clubhouse after the game. I'd go to the manager's office, part of my routine of giving the box scores, seeing if they needed anything. And one of your teammates, I forget who the hitter was, but sort of pimped a home run. And you and Josh were basically saying to him, you're going to get us hurt. And it's still there today in baseball, but Just take us from your perspective and maybe share some stuff, that I didn't know on your side that was going on with everything. Because you guys had some bench clearing incidents. You said you had, close to some real ugly incidents as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm just smiling because that brings back a ton of great memories. First thing I want to say is, I mean, it's many, many years ago, but although we did have a very, very heated rivalry, there was a tremendous amount of respect from the Lynchburg Hillcat side to the Wilmington Blue Rock side, and I would guess vice versa is
Absolutely.
true. Yep. A lot of times where teams seem to really have a disdain or almost like a sports hatred for one another. Really, the underlying foundation piece of that is just utmost respect, because you're recognizing that that ball club organization has a tremendous amount of talent, which they did, as you know. In regards to our team, Lynchburg, listen, I'll tell people for the rest of my life that was one of the greatest teams I've ever played on, from top to bottom. We just had incredible players who put together great seasons. But one of the things that made that team so special was, you mentioned a former teammate of mine, Josh Bonifay, who has now built a tremendous career post-playing days. Guys like Bonifay were raised not only to be great players, but how to play the game, how to handle themselves, how to follow the rules, how to play the game the right way. And he was a guy who influenced me and taught me some of those rules and to have some of those traits and to respect the game to a certain level. So, of course, there were times where we saw someone do something and we knew that it just wasn't right for either the game and or for our ball club. We were not shy. Like Josh Bonifay, myself, some other guys on the team, one thing that we did have in common was we were very vocal, whether it was emotionally, whether it was sharing our feelings towards a teammate or to an opposing player. So when things like that happen, pimping a home run, maybe putting our team or a player in a bad position, we made it very clear that we were going to express either that was right or wrong and tell that player or team exactly how we felt about the situation.
What always made me nervous when we traveled down to Lynchburg and, the league president was involved. I'd hear stories from our owner, who was very active in the Carolina League, Mr. Matt Minker. And, so you'd always go in like, don't escalate things from that side. But in Lynchburg, the clubhouses were right next to each other down the left field line. Nothing ever happened. You walked to the field on one side, you walked out, you guys would get in cars and go home. The visiting team would get on the bus. You walked the same path to the field and to leave the field later in the night after the game was over. Nothing ever happened in those instances.
Yeah, you know what? I think it also goes back to leadership and our managers. Listen, we had a great manager on our side, Pete McCannon. I know the Blue Rocks had an incredible manager as well. They just had a great roster of players. And listen, in between the lines, 60 feet, 6 inches, 9 innings, things are going to happen. And I'm a big believer that, yes, there are rules and unwritten rules and the right way to play the game. But I also am very pro. Listen, things get heated sometimes in baseball. That's what makes baseball beautiful. If there is an emotion being shown on either side, sometimes I would even question, do the players even care? Are they just there for a paycheck? Are they just there to put up their own stats? And I prefer a game where, yes, players do care about their individual development and stats, but they also care about the name or city on their uniform. That's what makes it special and fun. That's what I think the Blue Rocks did. That's what I think us as the Lynchburg Hillcats did. We did care about the name on the chest and the city that we represented and our organization. But when the game was over, when we were outside of the lines, we also knew that it's different in uniform, right? It's different in uniform. You want to make sure that you handle yourself accordingly. And I think that we did that very well. And that's why, nothing really ever happened in between the clubhouse or, in the tunnel. Nothing ever escalated too far.
There we go. That's my production crew, which I am, the sole leader of that one too. So
I love it.
You mentioned Josh Bonifay, and you did mention unwritten rules, and a lot has been made, a lot touched on again. Fernando Tatis swinging 3-0 with bases loaded and team up at, I think 7-0 at the time. I've come to the conclusion, or at least, let's understand what unwritten rules are. And to me, whenever they started being implemented in baseball a long time ago, it was one, to respect the game, which I think you've always had, and that's why I've always admired watching your career after baseball, your success with the Bucks. not only to respect the game, but as you're kind of alluding to, respect your opponent as well. I don't think that gets talked about enough as to why these things are in place in baseball.
Yes, and I appreciate those kind words. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And I've always been a big fan and advocate of respecting your opponent, showing admiration, recognizing great performances, recognizing great talent. By doing that, it also doesn't mean that you cannot be competitive. It does not mean that you can't stick up for yourself. It does not mean that you cannot be proud of your team or your organization. Those are always super, super, super important qualities. But I think us players coming up in the Pittsburgh Pirate organization, we were raised the right way to play hard, to compete, to stick up for yourself, to be proud of the logo, while at the same time being able to recognize other great talent, other great teams, and their ability to compete as well too. I think there's a fine line, and I think that as fans watching Major League Baseball, I think right now there might be a maybe, I don't know if generational gap is the right phrase to use, but right now we're a little bit of an in between of some of the guys that played in the past, and I don't mean a long time ago. It could be 5, 10, 15 years ago. They have their rules that they really hold on to. And this new generation, this next generation of young ball players may not hold those rules the same way. And I like to think that I'm someone that is kind of in the middle, to be quite honest with you. I think that there are unwritten rules that to me are non-negotiable, that should always be held to the highest standard. But I also think some of the unwritten rules that we're hearing about a little bit in the media today may be going a little too far, because I am very pro personality, emotion, excitement, enjoy the moment, because baseball is extremely hard. And I think people fail to forget that it's a game of failure. And when you fail as much as baseball players do, not just the offensive hitters, but pitchers as well, when you fail so much, when you do something well, when you have a taste of success, I think it's okay to show a little emotion, to pump a fist, to maybe scream out loud a little bit, maybe stand and watch a home run just enough where you could enjoy it. And I think some people sometimes take it a little too personal and are a little sensitive. It's a fine line. You have to do it the right way. And I think that both the Blue Rocks and the Hillcats always did it the right way.
You mentioned non-negotiables for you. What are those? Give us some examples if you would.
In regards to unwritten rules, or just baseball in general?
Baseball in general, and along those lines of the unwritten rules.
I think, well, first of all, non-negotiables are this. If you're a player that puts on the uniform, laces up the cleats, and you go hard 9 innings every single night, and you hustle every single time, and you give your best effort every time, and your manager, your coaching staff, and your teammates know that, when you do show a little bit of emotion, even if it's good, bad, or indifferent, if you were right for that emotion, or maybe you messed up and showed a little bit too much of bad emotion or immaturity, you're going to get the benefit of the doubt. So I think that a non-negotiable for me is you're going to give 100% every single day. You're going to play with passion. You're going to hustle all the time. Those are non-negotiables, and I think that those are fair critiques by media and or fellow players of a player if they're not. If there's a player who isn't giving 100% for 9 innings, is not giving all of their talent, then I think that they're up for that criticism, and I think it's fair. Some of the unwritten rules that I would hold closely to, for example, are I definitely think that there's a fine line of enjoying the moment, showing off a little bit, and or disrespecting a fellow player. For example, if a guy hits a big-time home run, I think the emotion should be allowed. But I don't believe that emotion constitutes standing at home plate for an elongated period of time. Do I think it's okay that a hitter sometimes, if he hits a home run, there is some sort of bat flip? Yes, I do believe it's okay, because I do believe that the game needs more excitement. But a bat flip may be different than a bat toss or a bat throw towards the sides of the opposing dugout. I don't think that that's right. And I don't believe that good, bad, or indifferent, a pitcher or a hitter should look at that opposing player and yell at them or curse at them because the player is going to take those kind of things personal. So I just think, I have a good friend of mine that always says, you have to have some feel, right? You got to have some feel. You got to have some feel for the situation, for the environment, and you just have to show your opposition. You got to show them respect, regardless if you're kicking their butt or if they're kicking your butt. There has to be a mutual respect on both sides of the baseball. And like I said, I think ultimately some people take things a little too personal. But at the same time, everybody's human, so in the heat of the moment, you're going to get heated. And I think that's what makes baseball beautiful. I think the human element really is what makes it exciting for guys like you and I that are no longer lacing up the cleats and then playing on the field,
So when you saw Jose Bautista a couple of years ago, how many years did you play with Jose in the Pirate system?
Well, I had an
opportunity where you guys were at the
Jose.
same level.
Well, to be honest, if you look at the stat sheet, I'm almost positive Jose and I never were on the same roster for the season.
Okay.
I was a year older age-wise, of course, not ability-wise. We know Jose turned out to be a legitimate superstar for many, many years. Jose and I believe we were with the organization for 4 or 5 of the same seasons. So Jose and I, struck up a pretty cool friendship, of course, as many players do during those spring training weeks. Those 4 or 5, 6 weeks, you become very close with players. You stay in touch with them throughout the course of the up and down seasons. And Jose and I have stayed in touch for many years, even now after baseball. He's been has always showed great support for my project, Dig Me, my clothing brand that we started. He was actually one of the original guys, like that was part of the nickname. So we kind of crossed, we cross played with each other for about 4 or 5 seasons in the organization. And it was awesome. I mean, like he was part of a group of friends that I had there that, they changed my life. I mean, just great people. And for Jose, what a career, man. I mean, legitimate Major League All-Star for almost a decade.
So did you ever have any conversations about the bat flip in the playoffs from a handful of years ago?
You know what's funny? To answer that question quickly, no. I actually went down for a special Dig Me project. We had something called Dig Me Discussions where I came up with this idea to do like a live interview series, which we're still trying to develop. And I kicked myself in the butt to get off on a tangent. We did that in 2014. This is long before podcasting really became popular, like way before social media content creation was like normal for people that weren't really into it. And we had an opportunity to be ahead of the curve. I'm going on a tangent. I didn't even realize that idea would have been amazing. He was our first guy that we traveled to go see. So we went to Florida. We did a live, like in-person candidate interview. And I believe it was the year or season before the famous iconic bat flip. Okay. So, you bringing this up, maybe I might reach out to him today and say, hey, Jose, can we come down and see you again and we can talk about it? What an incredible moment. I believe it's extremely polarizing. I know there's still people out there that probably complain about it. But once again, going back to you asking me about unwritten rules, listen, if it's Jose Bautista or, little Joe Smith in Little League, if you do that on a Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday night game in the middle of June where it's not a pennant race yet, I absolutely agree that everyone in baseball should get angry at you. That might have been maybe a little too much for a game that, of course, every game matters, but there wasn't, playoff atmosphere, playoff implications. But when you do that in a moment like that, in front of a sellout crowd, in a playoff atmosphere, when your season is on the line, with the opportunity to move on in the postseason, to possibly help your city and organization win a World Series, absolutely, I don't think anyone can get upset with that because I don't believe that Jose or any player ever scripted that kind of moment. It happened. He hit an incredible, they say maybe the second most famous home run in Blue Jay organization history. I'm all for it. But once again, like I said, if it happens in October, for me, I'm very pro motion. If that were to happen in a midweek afternoon game in July, I probably could understand the critique. So that was a long-winded answer, but I have not talked to him about it. But maybe somewhere down the road, Jose will come back on a Dig Me discussion show, and I'll be sure to ask him about that very special and famous moment in his career.
There you go. Want to wind through your career here a little bit more, then get into Dig Me Nation and everything that you're doing now,
of course,
away from baseball. But 2002, you're 24, you're a Carolina League All-Star, you're in the Pirates organization. The next step is 2003 in Double-A, which you get up to.
Yeah.
For the remainder of your Pirates career, you're a prospect at that point in time. Your numbers dictate that people are going to take notice of what you're doing. Your name's going to come up in discussions within the organization. Where did it go from there in the Pirates organization over the next couple of years?
Right now my first thought is I want to be careful what I say, but that's also not fair either because I'm also very honest. The reality is this. Listen, I was an undrafted free agent. I signed for $1,000. I got a glove and a pair of cleats. Anyone that knows professional baseball knows, one, it is an incredible opportunity that I'm super grateful for. To just be signed by a major league organization is a gift in itself. But those that are in the inside of baseball also understand that when you sign as an undrafted free agent for $1,000, that's basically like dead man walking. Like no one's expecting you to last much longer than short season. So to do what I did in a short period of time, to go from short season, hang in there, do well, keep my head above water in Hickory, first double-digit home run season in an injury-shortened season, and then go to Lynchburg, which, as you know from your experience, high A is really a barometer for minor league baseball. The majority of players are released either before or after high A. Most players do not get to double A. So for me to have the kind of season that I did in Lynchburg on a team like we did and to win a championship was just incredible, something that I never envisioned. So to your point, I go from no one to suspect to potential prospect. I'm now on the map, no doubt about it. And I have some very important people in the organization, guys like Pete McCannon, other coaches that I played for, that are now really pulling for me because I think I've opened some eyes of, can I be a legitimate major league superstar? I think everybody would immediately say, of course not. We don't think he has a skill set. But does he have the skill set to be a quality utility player that could sneak in 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the big leagues, come off the bench and help a manager? I think everybody was starting to say, absolutely. What happened after Lynchburg, in my honest opinion, was, and I say this all the time on the record, I am without question the worst part-time player that baseball has ever seen. I say it, and I truly believe that. I'm not just saying it for a soundbite. I don't know if there's ever been a part-time player in professional baseball that has ever struggled part-time as much as me. I was never able to grasp the role. A lot of it probably was my mental approach. A lot of it was probably maturity, where I did, of course, like any player, I did not like not playing. But I also truly believe whether I signed for $1,000 or $1 million, if I played every single day and got 500 plus at bats, I was convinced that I can hang in there with a first or second or third rounder. I knew it in my heart, and Lynchburg proved that. Unfortunately, after Lynchburg, I never got an opportunity to play every single day consistently and fight through my struggles, my slumps, my 1-for-20s. And because of that, you saw the stats, and the stats are there. You can't lie. 256, 235. I just struggled. I wasn't able. And I think that there was a time, there was no secret too, that I was also extremely disappointed with the decisions to not ride me out and allow me to play every day, especially in 2004, because the numbers were there from Lynchburg. And I think I proved that regardless of who they had or who was coming up or coming down, that if I got 500 at bats, I would have put together another season like Lynchburg. And that really would have really pushed the envelope for me to possibly being considered to be a major league player. Just unfortunate for me, the cards didn't play out that way. But at the same time, although I have my feelings of, do I think I should have been given that opportunity, and did I earn that opportunity? Yes. But the opportunity that I was given as a part-time player, I also did not take full advantage of. I struggled mightily. And in professional baseball, they use what you can't do more than what you can do. Not just for me, for any player, including prospects a lot of times. And unfortunately for me, I just wasn't able to take advantage of the part-time role that I was given.
So when your time ended with the Pirates, kind of go through there, because we'll get into the next level of when you went to the independent leagues. But with the Astros for a spell, with the Mets for a spell, and cross paths with plenty of guys who I from the Penn League, my years as a broadcaster in the Penn League, where now the guys were in A ball, and with another organization. And when you're it's one thing to be that guy who signs for $1,000 and you're in that organization and you have to prove yourself. But when those people are when you have those people in your corner, now you're going to a new organization.
Yes.
Is it almost start over mode right from the get-go, where you're almost in, quicksand as you're getting your start?
Yeah, you touch on something great, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but you're absolutely right. And listen, first-round draft picks go through this. And first-round draft picks, of course, they were drafted that high and got that big bonus because they have a skill set like someone like myself wishes they had. But there are first round picks that, let's say, they don't get to the big leagues within that 3-4 year window, or the general manager or the farm director or whoever the main scout was that believed in them get fired. When you lose those sponsors, so to speak, right? We all have sponsors. It changes everything for you. So for me, I don't want to put this guy on the spot, but I had a great opportunity to play for Pete Mackanin, and Pete Mackanin, was a Major League Baseball player, had a great career. Then he started, he did coach in the big leagues. He coached under Felipe Alou, and then he came to the Pirates organization where he started to build his managerial resume, which eventually got him back to the big leagues as a coach. Pete was my manager in Lynchburg, and Pete took a liking to me right away. I don't know if he saw a little bit of himself in me as a utility guy, gave me the opportunity to be a utility guy, and was a real big fan of who I was. I truly believe this, as much as Dale Swaim was awesome to me as well too in Double-A. Pete Mackanin got, I believe, the third base Major League coaching job with the Pirates the following year. I am convinced that if Pete Mackanin moved up to Double-A and I had the opportunity to play for him again, I probably would have been given the benefit of the doubt to get those everyday at-bats. Whereas
you were his guy.
I was his guy. And that does exist in baseball in a good way. When you become someone's guy, you earned it. You see that a lot at the major league level. A manager goes to a new organization, he signs a utility guy, he comes to trust that player. Pete was my guy. So I do believe that impacted my playing, my playing role as I moved up. And then, unfortunately, I got traded in a minor league transaction to Houston. And to be honest with you, I was given a great opportunity there. I was the starting second baseman in Corpus Christi the first year of their existence. And I played for a former Pittsburgh Pirate major league player, but also minor league coach, and Dave Clark. And to be quite honest with you, I showed up there with the opportunity of a lifetime. And for the first time ever, rather than saying, I'm as good as everyone else, I know it in my heart, I went about putting on my cleats every night saying, I have to do this. This is my chance. I have to get 3 hits. I have to turn double play. And instead of coming out and being Ray, who I normally am, I was putting all this pressure on myself, and I never got on a roll offensively. And that's kind of where my affiliate story ended. I think a lot of players who played affiliated ball know this. The window is extremely small. The window is very small, even if you're a first rounder. But when you're someone like me who signed for $1,000 and was undrafted, the window is even smaller. So I came out of the gates, on fire. My first 2.5 years, I really pulled off some special things. And then unfortunately I hit the wall a little bit in 2003, hit the wall again in 2004. Didn't take advantage of the opportunity as well as I should have in 2005. And that was pretty much it. I did get an opportunity with the Mets, which was pretty awesome because I never did play AAA baseball before. So to add that to my resume is something that no one could ever take away. But once again, if you look at the stats, people will say, Ray, I thought you were a good hitter. What happened with the Mets? Well, what happened with the Mets is, and I totally get it, they were a big market team at the time, a lot of great talent. For me, I'll always say this. Do I know for sure I would have been a quality Major League Baseball player? I can't look you in the eye and say yes. If you really ask me and put me on the spot, do I believe I had the skill set and the ability to get to the big leagues for at least one day? Without question, the answer is yes. So I don't know what kind of big leaguer I could have been because it's about opportunity and skill set. And I know I wasn't a 5-tool guy, but I do believe that I had the work ethic and I showed that I had the ability to be a utility guy that could have gotten there for a day or a month or even a year. It just didn't play out that way. And when I got to the Mets organization, it was just another example of I didn't play every day. And as we talked about, I really struggled a great deal. When you play once a week, I just couldn't figure it out. And it was a difficult experience, but I'd rather have a difficult experience playing professional baseball than a difficult experience doing anything else. And I was lucky that wasn't where my baseball story ended. And before I retired, I ended up enjoying baseball and doing some special things, which was pretty cool.
How did the opportunity, and that's where we go right now, is with the Long Island Ducks. How did that come about initially for you?
By accident. I signed with the Mets, which was a dream come true. I grew up a Mets fan, a diehard Darryl Strawberry fan, and it was just really, really, really dope to head to Port St. Lucie and to put on a Mets uniform for 5 weeks. I mean, it was amazing. And, something that was really cool. I broke camp with AAA, which I didn't expect. That was, I had a great camp. I didn't expect that. So that was an accomplishment. And also my very first at bat in my AAA career, my very first at bat, first pitch, first swing I ever took, I actually hit a 2-run home run. So it started off amazing. Unfortunately, that would be my only AAA home run of my career. But the Long Island Ducks thing was kind of by accident. Unfortunately, I was released by the Mets in July. I was very, very discouraged, again, like many minor league players who get released. I wasn't quite sure what the future held. I also was starting to get a little bit of concerned about my age and how much money I was making, and if I would ever get another opportunity with a major league organization. So to be quite honest with you, I actually came home thinking that this was going to be it. Nobody was going to want me. I needed to get a job. I needed to pay the bills, and that was it. But what I did do was, like the line in Bull Durham, you got to finish out the season. So what I did was I emailed the Atlantic League, just to let them know I was available. And I had all the intention in the world that I was done. Nobody was going to call. And the Long Island Ducks called. And ironically, my mom and dad recently moved out east in Long Island, out close to the Hamptons, past exit 70. So they had just moved to Long Island about a year or two before that. And the Ducks called. And there was about 2 months left of the season. So I said, you know what? First of all, the Long Island Ducks have a great reputation of being one of the bigger name franchises in independent minor league baseball. A lot of former major league guys there, owned by Buddy Harrelson. I'm like, you know what? Let me go kick it with my parents, spend some time with my little sisters, and finish the season. They get a sellout crowd every night. Let me see what I can do. To be honest, Steve, I went there with the intention of, this is it. This is it. This is my last summer. And I went there. I didn't care about my stats. I didn't care about trying to get re-signed. And you know what they say sometimes? When you take pressure off yourself, you usually perform better. And I think that's what happened. I finished that season strong. I opened some eyes with some of my teammates, and I actually landed my first winter ball gig in Puerto Rico. And I went to winter ball, did well, and I accidentally spent the next 8 years out on Long Island.
So from your side and the player's perspective, you're not with an affiliated team anymore. You're in the independent ranks, and there's a stigma there, right or wrong, and I think it's wrong. Guys are playing out their career. You didn't play out your career. You had 8 terrific seasons and memories that you'll be talking about for years and years with guys like me. But where at that point, as you're playing each season, you're sort of getting further and further away of, maybe an affiliated team giving you a call. At any point in those first couple of years with the Ducks, did any big league clubs and organizations knock on your door?
Well, that's a great question, because first of all, I'm the biggest advocate and biggest fan of the Atlantic League. One, it extended my career 8 seasons. I'm grateful for it. It gave me the same environment, the same to be honest, there were many nights that the competition was better than AA, because you had that cross between former major league players, AAA guys fighting. There was a different level of the player. They were hungry to get re-signed. It was something that was missing sometimes in affiliated ball. To answer your question, yes, I started to put up numbers that were very intriguing and very attractive. And mind you, there were some big name former Major League Baseball players that were getting re-signed. So scouts were there all the time. They were coming to watch those players. And here was a guy in myself that never got to the big leagues, and yet my numbers were just as good or maybe better. I'm leading the league in certain numbers. So, of course, as a scout, you're asking yourself, who is this guy? I did have some conversations with scouts. There was a season in 2007 and 2008, which was a big year for me, the first time I ever eclipsed 100 RBIs, which is a big deal in the minor leagues because you only play about 140 games. Where the scouts were like, listen, we're watching you in winter ball. I think, to be honest with you, Steve, I think what people were worried about with me was, number one, if he was so good, why didn't he pull it off in affiliated ball? And then two, when you get past that and you say, listen, the guy's gotten bigger, he's gotten stronger, maybe he's more mature, maybe he's learning from some of his older teammates now that play in the big leagues, all which is true. I think the big issue in professional baseball is when you get to the age of 30 years old, and you haven't gotten to the major leagues, I don't want to say that this is an unwritten rule, but as a position player especially, if you're 30 years old and you haven't pulled it off yet, I'm sure there's a certain level of apprehension, or, from a scout's point of view, some hesitancy, if that's a word, to sign someone of that age, because there's always going to be a younger, more athletic, and, to be quite honest with you, maybe a cheaper version of that player who's 29, 30, or 31 years old. And I think I really started to put up some numbers in the Atlantic League where people are like, whoa, who is this guy? When I just turned 30, my two of the big years that people talk about were 2008, 2009. I was turning 30 and 31 years old. So I do know that scouts are recognizing, especially after the 2009 season. I would have conversation with people all the time. Unfortunately for me, no one ever made a decision to sign me, but I do know I was part of the conversation for many years out there. And for me, being part of a conversation is better than not. So I'll always be grateful for that.
So what would it have taken you, if you've ever thought about it, to sign with a big league club? If somebody said, hey, okay, we want you, this is our plan for you. Also understanding, maybe that plan is now, but if you sign with them, you're with them in 3 weeks, they could say, you know what, it didn't work out from our end. We go in another direction. Now you could go back to the Ducks possibly, but, would you have been willing to start with a club at AA, or would you have had to have at least been AAA at that point?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure that the player dictates that at all. So, for example, if a player is offered a contract in the Atlantic League and they want to assign you to high A or to AA or AAA, the organization is going to do that. So I was never in a position to say, I'm not signing because you're going to send me back to high A or you're going to send me to AA. To be honest with you, I would have signed with the major league organization. I would have went back to AA at 29, 30, 31. I would have had no problem being the guy in the clubhouse being called grandpa or anything like that. I think my hope and desire and want for my career was wherever I went, I was getting the opportunity to play every day, because I think that's what my time in Long Island showed. My time in Long Island showed that if someone like Ray got 500 plus at bats, someone like myself is going to be able to put up big boy numbers, and that's what I did. My guess is my age was a concern. And was there room, space, and playing time to get me that everyday playing time? And the answer is no. And I'm guessing that was part of the reason why I didn't get another shot in affiliated ball.
So take us through each year with the Ducks, 8 years total. What is the offseason like? Are you having conversations sort of that late August, early September, where we are now, of, the next year? Or do they wait to the offseason to really start talking to you and filling out their roster?
Well, normally, there's a tremendous amount of turnover in the Atlantic League, which there should be. I was an outlier. My example of being there and turning into the face of the franchise for a little bit, being there for 8 years, is the exception, not the rule. Although almost every team in the Atlantic League, every organization had a player like myself that kind of was there for quite some time, which I thought was cool. For the most part, you sign your contract, season comes to an end, the roster is cleared out. I'm sure internally they have meetings of who they'd like to bring back because there's going to be availability. Luckily for me, it seemed that I was always one, especially after 2007. They seemed to like me a great deal, and I was always up on the board. And because I didn't sign with the major league organization, I was always available. So they have those conversations immediately when the season's over, but the build out of the roster goes all the way up to spring training, because you have to remember, a lot of the great players that an Atlantic team signs, a lot of the talent are players that were released during Major League Baseball spring training, sometimes up until the very last week before opening day. So an Atlantic League team can snatch up a guy who is supposed to go to AAA but gets released with 2 or 3 days left. So that roster is always being built out. Luckily for me, I was a priority for the Ducks, it seemed like, roster-wise. And I believe, 6 out of my 8 years, I was always the first announcement right after New Year's that they were re-signing me. So, I had built up a tremendous relationship with the Ducks. I always say this, there's no bigger fan of the organization. They were a place that gave me the opportunity to not only play every day, but be myself. And, they became family, and just like family, listen, as much as I like to think that they love me and admire me and will be rooting for me long after baseball, I was one of their players, and people joke around that I was the face of the franchise for a long time. It does not mean that, we didn't have difficult times together. It doesn't mean that we didn't butt heads sometimes. It doesn't mean that they were not disappointed in me at other times. I think that's what made our relationship so special, that it was a very real relationship. It wasn't, it wasn't always smiles and everything is going great. We went through a lot of ups and downs together, and I think that's what made the entire 8-year experience so awesome, I think, from both perspectives.
Two-parter here. You mentioned relationships. Did you build a relationship? Did you have conversations with Buddy Harrelson? And also, tell us about when you found out that they were going to retire your number 16 with the Long Island Ducks.
Yes, everything out there in Long Island was relationship building for me. It became a second home. Listen, I'll always be a kid from Jersey. I'm a Jersey boy through and through. But Long Island will always be my second home. My parents are still out there. My sister still spent a great time out in Long Island. I try my best to get out to Long Island, the Long Island Duck Stadium, the Duck Pond once or twice a year to go visit. And yes, I mean, Buddy Harrelson is a legend. I had a chance to play for him for 8 years. I built such a very special and close relationship with Buddy, somebody who's impacted my life a great deal. Just an amazing, amazing person. And it was really cool to play for him for as long as I did. And then talking about the Long Island Ducks retiring my jersey number, first and foremost, I'll say this. Would I have given anything to play a day in the major leagues? Everyone always says, one day in the big leagues, what would you give up? Would you do this? And everyone's answer is, of course, one day. Because when you play one day in the big leagues, no one could ever take that one day away from you. But during my speech of my retirement ceremony, if someone asked me, would I trade my 8 years in Long Island for one day in the big leagues? I know some people may cringe when they hear this. One day in the major leagues for 8 years of playing in that stadium in front of those fans, building those relationships, putting up the numbers I did, winning those championships, having a chance to play with some of those major league teammates that I had, playing for guys like Gary Carter and Buddy Harrelson. And for one day in the big leagues, as hard as it would be for me to pass that up, I wouldn't give 8 years for that one day. Now, if you said maybe a full season in the big leagues, that's a different story.
More than a cup of coffee.
More. It would have to be more than a cup of coffee to have given up 8 years. And one of the main reasons is this: whether it's Yankee Stadium or the Long Island Ducks and Duck Stadium, very few people that have ever been paid to play baseball, whether it's a minor league salary or a big league salary, will ever have the honor of having their jersey number retired. And I just became a father 8 months ago. There will be a time in the next 2, 3, 4 years that my wife and I will drive out to Long Island, and I will walk my daughter across that field up to the facade and point at her last name and her dad's jersey number. And yes, it's minor league baseball, but there's a professional baseball team in this country that draws thousands of fans every year that will never have a player wear number 16. And for me, it's hard to comprehend sometimes. I think that's really cool. I think it's dope. I think it's amazing. And that's why I couldn't give up one day in the major leagues for those 8 years. Those 8 years were so special to me. They helped me grow in a lot. They were challenging. I look back at times where I was proud of myself. I look back at times where I'm not proud of myself when I was there. It was such a learning and growing experience. And I walked away with 2 championship rings, and I walked away with enough hits and a few homers where, if you ask me, do I believe on my best day could I have played in the major leagues? Without hesitation, I would say yes. So it was a special place, and I joke around. I have a hashtag when I retired. We use the hashtag called 16 Forever. There aren't a lot of places where baseball players could say their number is forever, and I get to say that somewhere in this country, out on Long Island, number 16 is there forever, which is cool.
There you go. When you started that and you painted the picture with your daughter in a couple of years, that was terrific.
Yeah.
So on your LinkedIn, and I don't think I need to apologize because I just enjoyed every conversation I've had in doing this and building this, and we'll wrap up here in the next 10 minutes. But I do want to talk about this because on your LinkedIn it says, founder of Dig Me Nation in 2004.
Yeah.
Very much during your early stages of your playing career. How did it start in 2004? Because in years after that, where I learned about it and there was some publicity behind Dig Me and what you were doing, I always thought this had to originate somewhere on a bus ride in the minors.
Yeah, well, you know what's funny? I don't necessarily know if it originated on a bus ride in the minors, but I will tell you this: it originated in the minor leagues, and it'll make you smile. I think you know the story. Listen, my lifestyle apparel brand Dig Me was named after my nickname Ray Dig Me, which I got in 2003, following the very special season of 2002. Myself, Josh Bonifay, Sean Burnett, and Chris Duffy got to Altoona, Pennsylvania. That was the first time that a clubhouse, at least for us in minor league baseball, was a collection of veteran players, some of which had played in the big leagues for, their cup of coffee, and now with these young up and coming prospects with loud personalities. So there was that cross of like, oh God, you had some, guys that were a little more plain and maybe conservative and quiet and, the unwritten rule guys. And then you had these younger guys coming up with bright, colorful t-shirts and hats and book bags and loud with their personality, which was us. So the older guys called us the Dig Me Tribe. And of course, I was the chief of the Dig Me Tribe, and my nickname became Ray Dig Me. And I didn't do anything about it until there was an article written about us in the Altoona Mirror, and they referenced the nickname. And Altoona is a special, special town, beautiful stadium, thousands of fans. And some of the fans were like, I want to be Dig Me. I'm Dig Me. And I'm like, this nickname is amazing. So I went home that offseason. I'm like, why do people love this nickname? So I went out with some buddies. I'm back home in New York, hanging out socially. And I was so tired of introducing myself as, hey, I'm Ray Navarrete, professional baseball player. All my friends were baseball players. So when you introduce yourself, you're like one of a ton of people that are introducing themselves as a professional baseball player. So I took it upon myself and I told my buddies, I'm like, listen, if we go out tonight, I'm going to introduce myself as Ray Dig Me, fashion designer. Even though we didn't have a t-shirt, even though we didn't have a hat, I'm like, so I want to be different. And I did that. And because I did it jokingly, I said, you know what? I'm going to put this nickname on a t-shirt. And here we are 16 years later. You see the logo on my hat. You see the logo behind me. It has been the coolest, most challenging, most upsetting, most emotionally draining experience of my life, more than baseball. Because if you put me in a batter's box, I have always believed in my heart that I could dictate a little bit of the outcome. I believed in my talent, my ability, which in business you can dictate the outcome too if you work hard. I don't think I've ever signed up for anything in my life that I've gotten my butt kicked as bad as this. And here we are 16 years later. We've had a little bit of, some tastes of success. We've had some national exposure here and there, and we got really close to not getting over the hump, but really establishing ourselves as a legitimate brand 2 or 3 years ago. And we've had a long list of challenges and struggles since. But I would say this is the great challenge of my professional life outside of baseball. And I'm sitting here in my studio / office, and I'm not quite sure how much longer it's going to take for me to pull this off. I really can't tell you. And I would be lying if I said I'm not disappointed in myself that it has taken me this long to get further than I am. But I can tell you, we're going to get there. We're going to pull it off. We're going to figure it out. More so not just because I want to be a founder and owner of a successful and profitable brand, but more because I believe in the guy in the tie. I believe in this logo behind me because I believe that he has a positive message to share, a positive story to tell. And I believe that our logo is the next iconic logo that can continue to remind people to go out there and chase their dreams. And I believe we're just a piece of the puzzle. We're just missing one piece. And I don't know if I'm going to find it today after talking to you or in 5 more years, but I do know that unlike baseball, and although I want to be young enough to enjoy it at some point, maybe I figure it out in my 40s like I am now. Maybe I don't figure it out till someone says I'm an old, corny guy in my 50s, or maybe I don't figure it out until I'm in my mid to late 60s, but my daughter is a really cool, talented girl in her 20s. I can tell you this, maybe you'll look back at this footage and you can play it when we do. We will figure this out. Dig Me is going to find its way, and I think we're going to be an iconic brand. I believe that with all my heart.
Well, I love every word of that answer, and I'll tell you this. I mean, your background compared to my background, I'm still trying to build this slowly. I had a boss a few years ago. As I say, I'm trying to stay relevant as I'm creeping. I'm not quite there. I've got a couple years on you, but creeping towards 50, and it's like,
Yeah.
how do I stay relevant in the game that has given me so much as a broadcaster, to be
Yeah.
able to travel to Japan, to be able to, do TV for ESPN, Longhorn Network,
Amazing.
things like that. And you have served as an inspiration. And this is a perfect example of it. This is my background today. I was going to try to be outside and show you, the front lawn and the water down here where I'm at on Shelter Island.
Yeah.
You've got the background that I've wanted.
Yeah.
So I've always looked at you and, I'm like, that's, Ray, you are having the success. You are there in terms of this, and it builds, and, you want the immediate success, but, as you know already, the journey is part of getting there to a certain degree. And if they're retiring your number or your daughter's wearing it in 20 years, you've gotten there. But there was a process and there was a journey that was enduring.
Absolutely. And first of all, listen, what you just said there is exactly why I haven't given up. It's exactly why I've been diving into more content real quickly. I know we can't stay on here, all day. I know you're busy, but, talking about you doing this, and it makes me happy, is, I know that I'm not, I'm not a major league all-star with a huge platform. I also know I'm not a Tony Robbins or a Gary Vaynerchuk or anything like that. But what I have come to believe is, whether it's you or me or anybody, we do have an audience. And if we are willing to share our story, if we are willing to put ourselves out there, if we are willing to be a good influence, our audience can grow, our platform can grow, and that can not only help what you're trying to build, but it could help other people. And I really wish I would have dove more into it after I retired. Like, we opened our store, we had a great place, I had all these great ideas. I just didn't realize the power of the cell phone, the smartphone, a laptop. I didn't realize that people were using social media for other than taking photos of their food. I didn't realize that maybe starting a podcast and blogging years ago and sticking with it could have led to building a platform now. So that's another reason I've become extremely passionate about sharing content, and also being very authentic about it. Like, listen, my name is Ray Digme. I played professional baseball for a long time. I have this great brand, but I'm also getting my ass kicked on a daily basis. Like, I'm not just here saying, like, yeah, we got to Bloomingdale's and now I'm living in a house in the Hamptons. Like, that hasn't happened, so for you to be doing this, I just want to encourage you to keep going, because maybe it won't happen for you to get to where you ultimately want to go until you're 55 or 60. But when you get there, the journey is what's going to make you super pumped. Like, you're going to be so happy that you continued. And I think the one thing I could say to you or anyone else who's going to watch the show is, listen, the journey may be really long too. And the journey, without question, is going to be extremely painful. And there's going to be a lot of people in your circle, whether they're family, friends, or even colleagues, they're going to look at you and be like, yo, man, you probably should slow it down. Nobody's watching your show. And my advice to you is, don't listen to them, because maybe no one does watch for a year, 2 or 5. But in year 7, 8, 9, or 10, you may have the most popular baseball podcast show out there. And that's one thing that I'm learning about myself too, is every single day, you've got to do something to put content out there, because the more you do, the more people will find you, listen to your story, become a fan of Digme, become a fan of Lennox baseball, whatever it is. You just got to do it every day. It's like baseball. We showed up every single day. That's why we got good at it. And it's no different than building a podcast or creating content. If you don't do it every day, it's not going to happen.
One things that you've dipped your toes in the waters on is motivational speaking. One of the new websites that you've got is IamRayDigme.com. People can take a look at that. Give us an idea of where you are, early stages, and what you're trying to do here next 6 to 12 months, because whether it's high school kids, and I know you're involved in coaching, or even college kids, you get them early, you start getting those positive messages in the kids' brains. It does go a long way.
Yeah, 100%. One, I've been extremely passionate. I know a lot of people say, like, I have so many interests and everything. I do, but I also think that they're all related. The reason why I started Digme is, no lie, I love fashion, I love sneakers, I love hats. You can tell that's never going to change. But we created the logo of tipping, of the guy in the tie tipping his cap, because we wanted people to recognize great performances, passionate personalities, and to inspire each other, encourage each other. What I realized is, throughout my journey of playing baseball and building a business, was a great story of going from baseball to business, becoming an entrepreneur, lessons that I've learned, mistakes that I've made. And I started speaking a little bit by accident. And I had a couple of principals, educators say, why aren't you doing this for a living? And to be honest with you, you're going to laugh. This is how naive I was. I thought that space was only for Tony Robbins. Like, I'm like, no, nobody like me speaks. What I've come to realize is there's a lot of people like me that do speak, that do share their story. So I did it a couple of times. The feedback was very positive. I said, let me create a website separate from Dig Me that showcases who I am, both baseball, Dig Me, and what I'm trying to do. And believe it or not, I actually landed a bunch of high school assemblies, a couple of small businesses that hired me. The feedback was even better than the first one. So I'm like, wow, maybe I could start doing this because I'm becoming passionate. And Steve, let me tell you, just like everybody else, and I can't complain because we're all going through it, I landed 5 more schools and a small business for March, April, May, June, and July, and COVID happened. Right. So now, not complaining because, listen, me being disappointed that I lost those appearances is minimal compared to what our country is going through. But what I did come to realize is there are opportunities for people like me to go out there and share my story. And I'm starting to do that now via Zoom, Google Classroom, things like that. And when things start to open up, I really am going to commit to getting out there and speaking, because I think that between my experience as a pro baseball player to building a business to sharing some of my life experiences, I think that not only can I be a good influence on younger people and even people of our age, because I think that real quick on a tangent, I think that there are a ton of people our age, 30s, 40s, 50s, that have given up on their life, that they think that their job is all there's left. They can't do their hobby and turn it into a business. They can't go on that, vacation they've always wanted to. They can't live the life they've always envisioned. And it's like, okay, this is me at 40 and it's over, which I completely disagree with. So I want to be the guy that says, listen, I was the kid that batted 157 as a freshman in high school and batted ninth and thought I was going to get cut as a sophomore. I was the kid that wasn't drafted at Seton Hall, and just 2.5 years later, albeit in Major League spring training, not a Major League regular season game, stood in the batter's box against Mariano Rivera. And I'm also the guy who got a nickname, put it on a T-shirt, and got made fun of by his friends and said, "You're crazy," that actually saw his brand and his designs with a talented team sell in stores like Bloomingdale's, Tilly's, and Lids. So I'm very passionate about it. And when things start to open up, I'm hopeful that schools and small businesses will give me an opportunity to speak more, because I also think that I might get good at it. So I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring for that too. And hopefully something comes of that as well.
Well, you will be terrific at it. I have no doubt about that. I appreciate taking the time. I know we went well over what I thought, but great stories. We covered a lot, and I do appreciate it. Look forward to seeing your continued success, and hopefully we can do this down the road again.
Oh, 100%. This was amazing. I don't want to put you on the spot. I would love to have you on my show. So maybe, off air, we'll set that up. And then please do me a favor. Please follow up. Let me know the links and all the information, because I'll be sure to share this show on all my social media. Absolutely. Ray, thanks so much. Awesome, man. Take care. All the best. Wishing you the best. Take care. Ray Navarrete joining us. The background is coming. This was the tarps on the field outside where I'm at today. But just someone who I've known the name. I've watched him play. And 2002, we touched on it early on in the Carolina League, and just someone you went in the clubhouse, he would say hello to you. Didn't know me from a hole in the wall, but he saw me on the road, knew that I was the broadcaster. Bonifay, the guys in that clubhouse would just, some of them would just always say hello, and Ray was one of those guys. We have 2 more this week, and I scribbled out the name, but really looking forward to the next couple of days. Beth Greenwood, who I promoted yesterday, is going to join us on Friday. That's at noon Eastern, Lennox on Baseball live stream on our Facebook page. And tomorrow we're going to talk about the Lefty O'Doul documentary from John Leon-Dacus. And I'm going to talk to John later on today about the new project that he is doing with Saber, and get into a lot with him. That's going to be at 1 Eastern on Thursday. So again, as always, we hope you enjoyed our conversation with Ray Navarrete. And we will continue over the next couple of days with our other interviews as well. Follow us on Facebook, Lennox on Baseball. Follow us on Twitter, Lennox on Baseball. Enjoy your Wednesday, everybody.